In the aftermath of the Chet HaMeraglim, when those 12 representatives of Klal Yisrael had sinned so greatly, returning home, and sans Yehoshua ben Nun and Kaleb ben Yefuna, they told Klal Yisrael effectively that whereas Eretz Yisrael was extremely special, as had been described by Moshe Rabbeinu for all of those years, and as they had received from their forebears, but at the end of the day, they would never be able to actually enter the land itself and conquer it. They were simply unable to do so, and perhaps even HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, was unable to do so. And we know that they were punished, that they had to wander in the journey of the desert for 40 years instead of immediately entering the land of Israel. And we know that anyone above the age of 20 as well, ultimately, other than Yeshua ben Nun and Kaleb ben Yefuna, were denied entry into the land. And only the women and the children and the grandchildren had that chus of entering. And we're told that after all the discussions between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe Rabbeinu, what to tell Klal Yisrael would be their punishment, we're told that all of the Meraglim themselves, those 10, had died out in a plague. Yeshua ben Nun and Kaleb ben Yefuna, but Yeshua ben Nun and Kaleb ben Yefuna, chayu minha noshim ha'ein, they lived from amongst those men. Halachim l'soros ha'aretz. Rashi cites the Gemara Bava Basra that explains that not only did they live from amongst those men, namely that out of the 12, only 2 survived, but rather, literally, they lived from those men. That the shears in Eretz Yisrael that were due to be given to the other 12 individuals who perished, they were afforded to Yeshua ben Nun and Kaleb ben Yefuna. And says Rashi, rather unusually, v'kamu tachtayim l'chaim, and they arose in their stead to life. Now, number one, how does that work? Why were they able to yarshin, to inherit that which had been destined as a lot for the other 10 representatives of the tribes? And secondly, v'kamu tachtayim l'chaim, and they arose in their stead to life. What does that mean? So we know that in life there's such a concept as sensory compensation. That if a person is, Rahmana litzlan, somewhat blind or totally blind, he or she can actually develop a heightened sense of hearing. And if a person is somewhat deaf or very deaf, we are told that it's very possible that they could develop some kind of enhanced sense of vision. So in other words, if one of our hands, one of our arms isn't working properly, the other hand can pick up the slack and become even stronger. Sometimes it's to one's detriment. But the notion exists clearly within science that one part of the body can try to take over and try to be stronger because of the weakness or the lack of performance of another part of the body. Well, this having been said, let me share with you an unusual expression in the pasuk when HaKadosh Baruch Hu has told Moshe Rabbeinu that he's going to start over through him, will develop Klal Yisrael, and he's going to kill everybody out. Moshe turns to him and says, Rabban Shalom, you can't do that. It will cause such a chilul Hashem. Because the Egyptians and anyone else who look at what occurred within the desert will say that this strong and mighty God was able to extricate the people of Israel from the land of Egypt. And he marched in front of them at night in a pillar of fire, and during the day in a cloud atop their heads. Well, the people will say that obviously, whereas he was able to best the king of Egypt, he would yet be unable to do similarly to the kings of the land of Canaan. And therefore, they will say that you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sought to immediately decimate this entire nation, Ke'ish Echad, like one man. Arachaim HaKadosh explains the terminology of Ke'ish Echad means at one time. Instead of having them die out slowly through the desert and then enter the land of Israel, which would raise no eyebrows of anyone and which would inspire no questions as to your abilities, if you kill them all out, Ke'ish Echad, in one instant, well, then it won't reflect well upon you and they will question your abilities. But that's Arachaim HaKadosh. The words Ke'ish Echad literally means not at one moment, at what time, but it means as one man. Why Ke'ish Echad? I'll tell you why. Because at Har Sinai we were told, Vayichad Sham Yisrael Keneged Ahar, that Israel, singularly, encamped by the mountain of Sinai, Ki'ish Echad Belev Echad, say Chazal. Vayichan, one individual encamped there. Ki'ish Echad, like one person, Belev Echad, with one heart. Well, if what they achieved, the Jewish people, standing at Har Sinai, was a coalescence of individuals into a greater singular whole, well, they became one person. And you know what happens when you hurt your arm and you're one person? Your other arm begins to compensate. And no one questions it because you're one body. So, of course, one arm wants to pick up the slack for the second arm, wants to compensate. And it becomes stronger as a result. When Klal Yisrael sinned so greatly, listening to the report of those who went to scout out the land, the Meraglim, and they cried that night, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to punish them. But ultimately, though he punished them, those individuals, as it were, they live on. Whom do they live on through? Through Yeshua ben Nun and Kalev ben Yefuna. Chayu minha anashim oheim. They live on. Natlu chelkam shel meraglim ba'aretz v'kamu tachteim l'chaim. And they arose in their stead for continued life. Because the entire people was one body. And if it's one body, we compensate. Isn't it true that sometimes in life we see certain individuals, they're rare, but we see certain individuals at times who never seem to stop. They're always busy. They always have to go on from one accomplishment to another accomplishment. They're always making fabulous use of their time. They're always seeking to take on themselves the responsibility of yet another chore, yet another challenge, yet another achievement. What motivates them? What drives them? So we always like to assume that it's their inborn sense of responsibility to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Avodas Hashem. No doubt it is. But perhaps as well, maybe they're compensating. Maybe they're compensating on behalf of those from whom they have received life. A portion unrealized by others and born into this individual or these individuals. The kamul tachtam, and they're rising to the occasion to achieve that which cannot be achieved by others. And in their stead, they are accomplishing worlds of great, great, great things. Yeshua ben Nun and Kalev ben Yefuna were the only ones who survived. But perhaps the others also survived somewhat through them. Ki'ish echad b'lev echad. Indeed, as one individual, one corpus of the nation of Israel. Have a wonderful Shabbos.